Hey guys, Tahi here from Inspired RC. Today we're in my garage and I'm gonna show you how to install the Traxxas xmaxx 8S bumper on your Kraton 8S, just like that. A lot of you guys have probably got one of these and you can see it comes with a very small bumper. It doesn't really give much protection, especially to the body. If you can see, it's just completely exposed, and it's such a nice body. I don't really want to destroy it as soon as I just got it. The bumper itself is very inexpensive, probably £15 or so, eBay, and with it being a Traxxas bumper, you know that these things are quite solid. I've yet to see a bumper break. So let's get to it. Let's remove the shell first of all. So first things first, we need to remove the Arrma bumper. You can see there we've got just that 2 holes, and if I just flip it up, we have another 2 holes, and you can see I've already started unscrewing them just to save some time when we're actually installing them. So to remove the bumper, you're going to need a 2.5mm hex, and you just got to be careful with the screws at the front here. These have Arrma's famous Loctite on there, and it can be a bit tricky to remove. You may need a little bit of heat. This, I'll just show you quickly, can be a bit problematic trying to get some heat to them. What I did in the end is I found a brass tube, and I literally just put a brass tube on the end of it so I can direct the heat directly into the hole there, so I can heat this screw. Getting a soldering iron in there is quite difficult. With it being plastic surrounded around there, you can melt the plastic around there as well if the soldering iron starts touching the sides. So I decided to put a metal tube into the hole there, and I used my heat gun on the other end and just blasted a lot of hot air into it. It did take some doing. Eventually it came off, but guys, be careful. I would probably heat these screws if you can before you try to remove them. The 2 screws underneath are straightforward. They don't have any Loctite on them. They're going straight into plastic, so it shouldn't really be an issue. Although this is my second Kraton 8S. My first one that I had, I also bought that brand new. That one of these screws had been stripped in the factory. So just guys, be careful when you're installing or removing these screws. Look, they can be problematic if you end up stripping them. So I'm just going to pop you down here and we'll just get to it. Okay. So our first job is to remove the 2 screws at the front. There we go. Right, so guys, let me just quickly show you something here. Before I tend to start working on any RC car, you can see I tend to magnetize all my tools, simply because it's such a headache if you end up dropping a screw, especially inside the motor somewhere, and trying to find it again, it's difficult. What you want to do is you want to magnetize all your tools before you start. So this one's got some magnetism on there, but what we'll do is we'll just make it a little bit stronger, and all you really need is a magnet. I've got this, it's from my kids' dart set. It works ideally, it works very good for me. So all I do is just run it along the tip of whatever driver you're using. It could be a screwdriver, it could be anything really, and then just make sure that is magnetized. Just very, very worthwhile tip, guys. So we'll just remove the second screw. There we go. Another good tip is to have yourself a little container that you can put all your screws into. So let's just quickly, there we go. You don't want to be losing any of your screws. Right, so next we're gonna just, let me just pop you down here again. I'll just give you a bit better position. And we just need to whip this thing over. Now it's such a big car, you do need a lot of room, and just create a bit of mess as well. Just move you over to here. You want to remove these two screws here, you can see. Okay, now, so to remove the bumper itself, you just got to give it a wiggle, and also just pull on it gently, and you can see the bumper's removed. And what actually happens is your front brace there fits inside, and you just got to literally pull it off. So that's your Arrma bumper, and you can see the difference. That's a Traxxas bumper. Look at the size of it compared to the Arrma one. Very little protection this will give you. So definitely a good addition to upgrade this. Put an xmaxx bumper on the front of it. Right. So now we're just going to get rid of this car off my bench. Right, and you can see all the mess the car has inside once you tip it over. So I'm just going to give this a quick wipe down. There we go. We're back. Okay, so we've got the bumper off. Just have a quick look what you see. We're going to use these two holes here on the Arrma bumper, and then on the Traxxas bumper, them two holes roughly line up to these two that are already located on the Traxxas bumper. Now these are closed holes, you can see on this side they don't come through, and we really want to avoid having to make fresh holes to put bolts through. So what I plan to do is get a couple of screws, something like this. Now this is an M4, this is an M4 screw, and it's around 35 millimeters long. I had to trim this screw down to fit in and be nice and tight, but it does measure around 35mm, so if you can find a screw that is 35mm, it's perfect. A little smaller doesn't really matter, as long as you get a decent amount of thread inside, so it doesn't really snap off or anything. The bumper won't snap off under strain. So just quickly putting the bumpers together, you can see they roughly line up. Now on the xmaxx bumper we have a piece of plastic along the bottom here, and when we try to marry them up together, I've had to trim this bumper down. When I marry it up, it sits nicely, if you can see, and once it's all on, it gives it a nice finish. Now you have to be careful when you're trimming this. If you've got a Dremel, that'll do fine, but I don't own a Dremel, so what I did was I used a Stanley knife, a nice sharp blade on the end of it, and I literally just took little shavings off and just worked it. I feel that this is probably giving me a really good finish on the outer edge, if you can see there. Now the amount you need to take off, if you can see, there's two lugs, just one there and then one there. These are located right at the bottom of the bumper, and I've not touched the corners, so from the lug here I've just literally shaven a very minimal amount off. You want to be careful you don't shave too much off, because it will just end up leaving a gap. When you put your screws together, it'll end up sitting away from the bumper and it doesn't look nice. So to get that nice pristine finish, you literally only need to take a little amount off. Okay, so on this side here, once we put our screw through, if you can see there, once we put our screw through and tighten it up, there's a gap, if you can see there. Now whatever you can find, some kind of washers or plastic tubing would do. So you do need to put something in there. Now what I've got here, these are actually, you can see I've had to cut them down a touch just to make them exactly the right width, but these are actually spaces that you get when you buy a TV wall bracket, and they're in the black finish as well, so it looks quite nice. It doesn't stand out when you've got it all on there. So I've had to cut mine. Sorry, I don't have a ruler, but I'll just put this on here. I've had to cut mine to around 6-7 mil. And it does perfectly fine for me. So the way these work, put your screw through, put your spacer on there, and then just screw it together. Just get it started. Because these holes don't exactly match up, you've got to give it, it's gonna get a little persuasion to go along with screwing it in, just to get it all nice and tight. So the way I do it is I'll just start the first screw and then the second screw, I'll get it in. So I'll just quickly show you there. Get the second screw in, and just either use a hand driver or a screwdriver. I'm going to use an electric tool just to make things a bit faster. I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. Same on this side here. Now I'm using silver screws. Preferably I'd like to use some black ones, but it's just what I had to hand. Now once I do screw these in, and you can see they actually sit inside the bumper, so once it's all screwed up you won't see that it's a silver screw or a black screw, but it just depends on the head of the screw that you find. This side. Now it is plastic, so the last little bit you want to screw it in by hand, just so you don't end up stripping them screws, because that's what's going to give this bumper its strength. Just enough. Just be careful you don't go too much. I'll just quickly check that now. You can see underneath it actually looks not too bad. Right, so that's your bumper attached to the Arrma bumper. So the xmaxx bumper is now attached to the Arrma bumper, and if you feel you've got a little bit of play, give it a couple of more turns. As I said, my screws are 35mm, so I just want to be careful I'm not going too far, but a 30mm screw length would suffice, and you can get that nice and tight. So quite happy with that. Okay. So now we'll get it back on the car.